news, etc., etc., etc. There's lots going on, lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We have to start with Robert Pickton, dead, right? CTV News reports BC serial killer Robert Pickton dead following prison attack. And this is yesterday, 4:00 p.m. So right on the drive home, right? Not necessarily trying to bury it, but, bury it enough, right? Here is Toronto Sun talking about some financial news. And they say federal government posts a $50.9 billion with a B dollar deficit for 2023-24 fiscal year. And so that's the federal government. That's bad. Right, that's bad. The results for the April to March period compared with a deficit of $41.3 billion reported for the same stretch of its 22-23 fiscal year. Government revenues were up $13.7 billion or 3.2% to $444.8 billion, reflecting higher personal income tax, goods and service tax, and other non-tax revenues, but partially offset by lower corporate income tax revenues. Program expenses excluding net actuarial losses for the first fiscal year totaled $440.6 billion, up 3.1% from $427 billion. Higher interest rates pushed public debt charges up 35% to $47.5 billion, up from $35.2 billion a year earlier. Net actuarial losses totaled $7.6 billion compared with $9.8 billion in the same period last year. So, I mean, it feels like baseball statistics. There's not a lot of like, what's that impact? What's that going to impact me? But I mean, like the interest rate pushing the public debt charges up 35% from $35 billion to $47 billion. That's going to impact us, and our governments are going to have less money for social programs and things like that because more money now has to go to, or healthcare has to go to servicing that debt. See what I'm saying? And having a $50 billion deficit, that's really high, very, very high. And I think it limits our fiscal maneuverability to respond to problems. There's less room to respond to problems because we're maxed out, right? I mean, print a little bit more money, right? But that's inflationary. Oh no. Blacklock's reporter says federal debt ceiling is up $1 trillion in 3 years. Not a typo, $1 trillion in 36 months. Why? A result of the borrowing. Oh, but I mean, at least we're getting really good outcomes, right? All of this borrowed money, all of this irresponsible spending, we're getting great outcomes, right? Right? No. On the screen, if you're not watching, is a picture of Leslie Church's liberal storefront, and the doors are locked and everything's on the inside, and it looks kind of shabby, and there's somebody sleeping on the stoop there, right? They've lost their hat, the hat's on the sidewalk, and there's no blanket or anything like that. They're just in a coat and a sweater and like clothes and things, and they're sleeping there. So all of this spending money, we've just had increased homelessness, increased problems. People aren't benefiting. People can't afford basics because of all this spending. Auntie says this picture really should be speaking volumes to people, while the Liberal Party tells us everything is wonderful and great. And we see MPs all tweeting about helping this Canadian in her riding vie for your vote, while they ignore this right on their doorstep. Actually, I see the MPs tweeting about period bracelets, and I wonder what the heck has gone wrong with their brains. It's like that Star Trek episode where they've all got the brain worms, and then Picard and Riker come in pretending that they've got brain worms. And I don't know, I can't remember exactly how they killed the brain worms. That storyline kind of died. But fundamentally, everybody's acting real weird. Period bracelets? Like, you've noticed the homelessness, right? You've noticed the invasion. You've gone to a grocery store? No? Camus, let's talk about COVID and bird flu fears. And this isn't Friday night news dump. They're trying to rev this engine up. They're trying to get that fear going. I am not showing this to you in order to make you think that bird flu is something that you should prepare for. I am not showing this, well, other than prepare to say no, prepare to say I'm not wearing your damn mask and we're not doing this thing again. But my concern is they're going to target farmers with it. They're going to target all sorts of farms with it. I'm showing this to you to be aware of where they're trying to take the narrative, right? They're going to throw Trump behind bars. They're going to bird flu it up. They're going to do mail-in ballots. They're going to cheat. And it seems like it's all about the U.S. presidential election, I guess, right? Like, because that's what COVID was about, right? And it was 3 years of absolute madness to get back to some kind of semblance of normal. And even then, not really normal, right? Like this quasi-normal that we've got, ignoring the bamboozle that we've gone through. but they're trying to rev this all up, presumably for the presidential election. And I would just want you to be aware of where we're at in this. They are talking about human bird flu to cow to human transmission. And I don't think they've got any proof. I think they've got about the same amount of proof that COVID had, which is just believe us, just trust us. No, we've got the lab in China has already sequenced this, and we've definitely matched that sequence to this test. Just believe us. Here is bird flu, right? COVID. Electric boogaloo. Here we go.
This third case means that we should be alert, not alarmed.
3 cases in the last 2 months. Overnight, CDC officials in Atlanta confirmed another dairy farm worker in Michigan has tested positive for the H5N1 virus, or the bird flu, tied to a dairy outbreak.
Cows are regularly transported across the country. And so as cows that have been infected with H5 move, workers are infected.
Now 1 farmer in Texas and 2 in Michigan have tested positive. All are expected to be okay. I spoke one-on-one with Dr.
All are expected to be okay. Okay, so they've successfully tied. They've been talking about bird flu. Did you notice this? I don't know if you noticed this on the first watch here. We're just going to have this in the background. They're talking about bird flu and how cows are transmitting bird flu to humans, and they've got pictures of cows here. Right? He's talking about bird flu.
H5 move.
Cows being infected with bird flu move, right? So they're transported, and so the workers are at risk because the cows are transported. Do you see how bird flu could be an attack on meat, on red meat, on ground beef and things like that? Right? This is pretty wild stuff. But they're showing
now 1
cows
in Texas and 2 in Michigan have tested positive.
Bird flu.
All are expected to be okay.
They're going to be okay.
I spoke one-on-one with Dr. Nirav D. Shah, Principal Deputy Director at the CDC. He said his team confirmed the sample in their labs. Cattle in 9 states have tested positive for the virus.
The lion's share.
The virus now, not the bird flu. Oh.
Have been negative.
Georgia does not have any infected cattle, though Dr. Shaw said dairy farmers are still the most at risk of exposure.
If you work on a farm in Georgia, even though there haven't been any herds that have tested positive, it's still worthwhile to talk about and think about whether you ought to be wearing PPE, whether it's goggles, glasses, or gloves to reduce your chances of being infected.
Dr. Shaw said if you drink milk or eat dairy products, you are not at risk of infection because pasteurization has proven to kill the virus.
And that's where it ends. And there's another 10 seconds of silence. Pasteurization has been known to kill the virus. But I think that if your cows test positive for bird flu, they're going to cull your cows, and then your milk is going to increase in price because there's fewer cows, and they get their plant-based diet. Here's some almond milk. Here's some cashew milk to replace that. Here's some, I saw there's a brand that does oat milk and all sorts of other stuff. And I saw a new branding, dairy-free milk in a carton. And it didn't clarify which, if it was a cashew milk or an almond milk or a oat milk or whatever it was. It just said non-dairy milk. And I thought, oh my gosh, is that the insect paste stuff? Because I don't want to try that one. I don't want to try any of the other ones. I just want to have, and I mean, cow's milk's a little weird too, right? But also, if people picked up human milk for their tea, it would also be weird, right? If we had a whole bunch of if it was acceptable to drink human milk rather than cow milk, right? But the whole milk concept, I think, would be a hard sell for me if I hadn't been raised with it. Anyway, regardless of the milk idea, I don't like the cricket milk idea, and it's very, very interesting how they've restructured health to attack the food system for your safety comrade. It's quite something because it sounds so plausible, right? It sounds so plausible, and people will go with it. And then people will be afraid of being the kid who says that guy's naked, he's not wearing any clothes. Because if you're the idiot who says, that guy's naked, then you're not smart enough to see the clothes that he's wearing or whatever. You're not smart enough to understand the science, right? It's the same kind of thing. But realistically, dude's naked. There is no science supporting this. This is madness. This is madness what we're doing, culling herds to protect against, the possibility of disease. Now, if you start having cows drop dead, right? And you're like, okay, well, we've got to figure this out, right? And then a cow's coughing, and you're like, oh, well, maybe they've got tuberculosis, right? You kill the cows who've had tuberculosis. That seems to make sense to me. And then you watch the herd closely. And if other cows come up with tuberculosis, you start testing and isolating and blah, blah, blah. You can fix the problem without killing all the cows. And I think you should probably leave it up to the farmer. And this is just tuberculosis, for example, like in England. You should leave it up to the farmer to deal with the herd, right? Provided that the farmer's not mixing with other herds, right? Like, unless the other farmer wants to deal with tuberculosis. I don't know. But it doesn't make sense to mix herds if you've got a sick herd, right? So fundamentally, why not let the farmer deal with it, right? And I think that farmers even have like sub-herds. You could separate the sick ones from the not sick ones and just watch and see, right? I don't know. There seems to be solutions, but we're not interested in that in favor of blanket policies that harm a lot of people and err on the side of total safety. And you can't promise total safety. It just doesn't work like that. CBS News is reporting some 4.8 million doses of flu vaccine are now being prepared for use in response to the growing U.S. outbreak of highly pathogenic avian influenza, or H5N1. Watch out for those cows. Because, cows move with avian flu. Right. Don't question it too much. I saw this headline and I thought it was weird, and it fits into healthcare, but not quite into COVID and things. Out in Newfoundland, they've found some solutions coming for piled up bodies outside Newfoundland Hospital. They're piling up bodies outside Newfoundland hospitals? Not quite. Health officials in Newfoundland and Labrador say they're only weeks away from a solution to move unclaimed human remains out of roadside freezers and into a nearby hospital. A temporary facility inside the Health Sciences Center in St. John's will be available in mid-June, to be followed by a proper and permanent unit that will be ready in October, according to Ron Johnson, a vice president at Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services. A growing number of unclaimed human remains have been held in what officials call temporary and temperature-controlled storage units in a receiving bay outside the Health Sciences Center in St. John's, Newfoundland, and Labrador's biggest hospital. See, that's a very different thing than like piled up bodies outside Newfoundland Hospital. I mean, it's not quite piled up bodies. Like, they've got a special storage thing, and they're going to open a special storage area inside the hospital and then build a permanent one by October. That's basically it. But isn't that weird? Like, headline says this, right? Like 5 dead, and when you read, you're like, not really. Oh, okay. So you're not piling up bodies outside of Newfoundland hospitals? Okay, cool. Weird headline, CTV. I just wanted to show you that because I thought it was strange. This is interesting. Michael Geist says rumors of CRTC decision on Bill C-11 streaming law implementation confirmed. They say it's coming next week. And so there's a media advisory talking about this announcement coming next week, right? A media technical briefing on the ongoing implementation of the Online Streaming Act is set for, this was released May 31st, and then the date for the technical briefing is June 4th. And so they'll go through what's going on, basically. But the pathway here has consultation going to July 2024. This is the CRTC regulatory plan to modernize the broadcasting framework and implementation of Bill C-11. And it goes through the pathway to implementation. And the consultation was supposed to be ongoing until July 22nd, 2024, and they're fast tracking it. So that seems like weird, right? And they haven't updated. They updated this on like May 6th or something to that effect. There's a date where they updated this, May 7th, 2024. Okay, so they had conversations about it as recently as May 7th, and now they're moving into the next phase, according to Michael Geist. So, like, that's interesting to note. Now, this is the CRTC's myths and facts about C-11, the Online Streaming Act. And they say, and they try and make it very clear, that what they're trying to accomplish is to make sure that there's Canadian content shown to Canadian users of online streaming websites. And they say explicitly that podcasts, things uploaded to YouTube, will not be covered under this act. So it seems like if this is true, that's good. but at the same time, we've got rampant censorship anyway. Like, there's rampant censorship anyway. I promise you. I wish I was wrong. I wish I was just bad at my job. Like, I wish I was just bad at this. You know what I mean? And just only hundreds of people like me. You know what I mean? Like, and not lots of hundreds of people like me, right? Like, there's a situation where the result I get is much better than comparable results in this YouTube channels with the same number of subscribers or things like that. People either come back to my show, watch my show twice, which wouldn't make sense if my show was terrible. There's all sorts of things like that. So it leads me to believe, I look on YouTube, and in one section of YouTube, it gives me it registers 500 views, but in the YouTube studio, it says half that at 220 or something like that. And so it's interesting because on one metric, it's like my most popular video. And then on another metric, it's not. It's like, number 8 or 9 or something like that of the last 10 videos. It's very unpopular. So they play with my metrics all the time, and they have for years. And it's one of those things where they don't need any more control. But this seems like on the surface, they're saying, don't worry about it, it's going to be fine. And then just under the surface is like what they're actually using it for. So I don't know if I take this as face value. I don't know if I believe this, but this is what the CRTC is saying. Okay. In a nutshell, subject to the Broadcasting Act, broadcasters such as television service providers, programming service providers such as television channels and radio stations, and online streaming services not subject to the Broadcasting Act, users of social media. Okay, so interesting. Myth, the CRTC will regulate content and digital creators. Fact, we will only regulate broadcasters, including providers of both traditional broadcasting services and online streaming services. And they say by content and digital creators, we mean YouTubers, influencers, or individuals making content on social media platforms like Facebook or Instagram for other users to enjoy. Podcasters making content that's carried on audio streaming platforms like CBC Listen or Spotify, and producers making content that is sold to online streaming services like Netflix. The CRTC, myth, the CRTC will regulate social media users and content. Fact, we will only regulate broadcasters, broadcasting services, and online streaming services that make programming available to the public. Myth, the CRTC will censor what you watch, read, or listen to online. Fact, what is available online will not change. We will not censor the content Canadians listen to and watch online. The CRTC will regulate the algorithms of online streaming services. Fact, we will not regulate the algorithms. We want to encourage innovation to make Canadian and Indigenous content easier to find. The CRTC will regulate the prices of online streaming services. Fact, companies will continue to sell their services using their own business models and plans. Myth, the CRTC will regulate online video games. Fact, we are proposing to exempt online games offered by online broadcasters from any requirements. So that's their little handy helper thing. But again, I think they can use this to have more fine-grained control over what's seen and what's not. Chris says, X is not a free speech platform. De-amplification is censorship. And what is happening on here is insidious. Time for nature and to break the chains. So yeah, and gov.exe is corrupt is responding. He says, we posted exactly the same thing at exactly the same time. What's going on with X lately? He says, I see posts in my timeline from people I never engage with. Likes are disappearing and accounts are being suppressed. I can't read this anymore. I guess he removed it? Weird. That seems weird. It seems strange to remove something that you quote tweeted at somebody, right? So they're suppressing things in ways that are not detectable, and these laws being changed are being changed for a reason, and it's not to protect Canadians and make sure they see CanCon, I don't think, right? Because they're not promoting my content anymore. Okay, I'm not Indigenous enough, I guess, born here and all that. And the Patriot Voice says, warning to all creators on X, something incredibly disturbing has been brought to my attention. By July 1st, 2024, in order to continue receiving payments from X via subscriptions or the ad revenue share program, you'll be forced to upload your government ID via X or government ID 2X via an Israeli company called Auth10X. Auth10Tix. And he says, we will not sell our identity and biometrics to a company that is connected with Israeli intelligence. Not only is this a major security risk, but it's also a matter of your own personal security, as you're expected to give up your ID, a selfie, and your address. Say the wrong thing on X and you may get a knock from some very unwanted and unwarranted visitors. I don't think so. How the heck is this even remotely legal to be forced to give up your information to a foreign country? There are tons of other authentication companies out there that are based in the US. I'm not okay with this, not at all. You shouldn't be either. Be loud about this. Elon Musk, reverse this. So they get you addicted to the money. And I think I've talked about this before, but they get you addicted to the money in the form of like, oh, here's your revenue share and here's a ton of cash. And you start thinking like, oh man, I deserve all this money to tweet right? Like I just hang out on Twitter, I deserve all this money. And then they say, oh yeah, by the way, to get the money, we need a selfie and your government ID and your address. And like you've given them banking information. Like you trust this company because you've already given them some information to pay you in the first place, right? So it seems like a small incremental ask, but it's not really. And they've given you money and you want to keep the money, right? You're like, I'd like that money. That money's great. I enjoy tweeting for money. And so a lot of people will comply, right? I don't have enough impressions, I guess, on Twitter to qualify for subscriptions or any kind of ad revenue share. So I never got any money from Twitter. So I've never done anything like that. But I mean, like I was trying free speech platform. Sure. I was trying to like run subscriptions through Twitter so I could upload like the full version and the paid version and do both on Twitter, right? Just directly right on the platform. Nope. Sorry, Mark V. So good for me, I guess. I never became addicted to the Twitter money, but it's, I mean, insidious, right? Insidious, get you addicted and then bait and switch, right? Evil stuff. Here's some more CRTC extra credit links if you're interested. Like this is the regulatory plan, and here's the regulatory plan, which is what I've been referencing, right? And it says summer or spring 2024, the consultation on Indigenous broadcasting policy was supposed to go from March 22nd to July 22nd, 24. And this is the first in a multi-step co-development process. And according to Michael Geist, process is over. We're going right now, baby. So what are they using it for, right? It just seems weird. Here is Michael, I think this is a Michael Geist piece. Maybe not. Margaret Robbins. It's not Michael Geist. But anyway, exploring the controversy around Bill C-11. So this is talking about what could happen. But it says the CRTC powers under the bill are very broad. Now the bill is passed. We anticipate a policy direction to the CRTC will be issued by Cabinet to help guide the CRTC in its implementation of the bill. So it's still speculation on these kind of things, but fundamentally I think they're using it for censorship, and we'll have to see how it works out, because it seems like they can use it to crack down on anybody who's saying things they don't like and say, oh, we're justified in cracking down. Here's Nick Hudson, and he's talking about censorship, and I agree with his assessment here.
What do you think? Do you think there is a parallel because between both COVID and climate?
Yes, let's take a step back. The general rule of thumb that I believe everybody should adopt is that if any problem is being presented as a global crisis, then it is a scam. And the pattern that we are confronted with is really the fabrication of global crises. The presentation either of non-existent problems or small local problems as being general global crises. That fabrication followed by the assertion that the only solutions that are permissible are global ones that require a global authority, global control. That is the general pattern that we are up against. The COVID policy response was one of those. Look at what happened to countries like Sweden or Tanzania, who tried to push back against the orthodoxy, the new orthodoxy. And the climate crisis, the climate change crisis, is another example where we are told that the biggest threat to the world is this molecule, CO2. and that an increase in the level of this molecule will cause an increase in temperature, and that that temperature increase will be bad for us, and that the only thing we can do is consume fewer fossil fuels and less energy. That's fitting the pattern exactly. The other things you can observe is, instead of presenting science as an ongoing, evolving activity, it is presented in terms of static knowledge, consensus. And you see the cancellation and censorship of dissident voices rather than engagement with them. These patterns are proof of a scam. That is what people need to understand. Whenever something is presented as the science, as a consensus, it is a scam. You do not have to go and get engaged in all of the minutiae of the scientific principles and the models and the measurements at all. You can know with absolute certainty that you are dealing with a scam when dissent is suppressed.
What do you?
Yes. When dissent is suppressed, you are dealing with a scam. I think absolutely, right? 100%. And we're watching that. We're watching that in real time. Here's more examples. Hello everyone, thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful